Now, if you've ever been in an acting class or rehearsal room, you might have heard the director say something like, "Don't play the state, play the intention." But what does that even mean? Why does it matter? And how do we do it? Hi, I'm Scott. You're watching Inside Musicals, the channel for all things musical theatre. Now, if there's one thing I've learned as a performer is that there are as many ways to learn how to act as there are performers. So that's why I offer you a whole bunch of quick tips, from the Judy method, the 3-point technique, the newsreader trick, or how to have better stage presence. So you can try them on for size and add to your actor's toolbox. This video is one of those fundamentals of acting that all actors must understand if they want to make their performance more consistent, more authentic, and go from something generalised and surface level, something specific with more depth. I want to keep this simple, so here's an example. So let's say you come into a scene in tears, and I say to you as an actor, "What are you doing?" And you say, "I'm being tearful." Well, we'll call that playing a state, a generalised state of tearfulness, rather than a specific response to what's actually happening in the scene. And when we come into a scene with a predetermined sense of how we're going to play that scene, regardless of what we get from the other actors or characters, it usually comes across as fake or insincere. But if we want each moment to feel spontaneous and motivated, we play the intention behind the tears rather than the tears themselves. It's a small distinction, but it's an important one. Maybe we use those tears to manipulate someone, to elicit sympathy to get what we want. And now it has purpose, because we're playing the verb, the manipulation, rather than the noun, the tears. And this action gives us something to do in the scene, something to play. It allows us to respond to whatever happens without losing our intention. And we might discover that there's another way to manipulate that doesn't involve tears. Maybe we seduce, maybe we bully to get what we want. And now we have all these multiple strategies coming from one clear intention. So for each beat of each scene, we ask why. I'm doing this in order to what? And it's usually about getting something from or instigating something in another character. And that's the key to playing the intention, the action, rather than the state. There are two parts. First, we find the verb to describe what we're doing. Then we connect it to a why, usually a need involving another character. Because if it's not both, it doesn't work. For instance, we might start with, "I'm holding back my tears," which is active, but it's not connected to another character. So we adjust that to, "I'm holding back my tears to protect my children from pain." And now it has purpose. It's specific, it's motivated, and it's an action connected to another character. There's usually more than one answer, and you might have to try a few iterations to find the one that works best for you as that character in that beat of that scene. And I have a theory, or at least a working hypothesis, why the action is so important to both the actor and the audience. It's fundamental to who we are as human beings and why we've told stories for thousands of years. In sketch comedy, we typically play the state and the characters are stereotypes, and we laugh and we love it because that's its nature, but we really feel for those characters. But story is about experiencing the process as though firsthand, as though the viewer is the character, discovering who they are through adversity, through either rising to the challenge or falling on their face. And we relate to it because it echoes the pattern of our own lives. Most of our lives aren't wrapped up in a neat bow at the end. The bulk of our lives are in the process of discovery, of defining who we are through our choices and actions. And so it's the same with story. It's not just about the ending, it's how we get there. It's one thing for someone to say to us, "Be brave," but it's another for us to read that story or to see it played out on stage or screen and step into the shoes of Oscar Schindler, Harry Potter, Galinda, and feel what they feel, even if just for a moment. There's a part of us that would like to think that, if tested, we might discover more depth to ourselves. But if, as actors, our performance is generalised, unmotivated, disconnected from some archetypal truth of trying, succeeding, failing, we rob the audience of that experience. So the performance feels somehow empty, even if it's tragedy, like Othello, Sweeney Todd, or to a lesser degree, A Little Night Music. We say to ourselves, well, I would never make that mistake. And it gives us hope. But we can't talk about truth and believability in the scene without touching on characterization, or how we embody a character. Because if we reduce it to all the tics and affectations of a stereotype, say a dumb blonde, with all the broad strokes of a sketch comedy, we're back to a generalised surface-level performance. But if, like Marilyn Monroe in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, you dig a little deeper to portray a woman who, in spite of being underestimated for her beauty and naivety, story of my life, she ultimately proves herself to be smarter than anyone thought, she's no longer a stereotype. She's a flesh and bones character, and so we care about her. And whereas stereotypes are limited to a set of characteristics, archetypes unlock possibility. They're only limited by our imagination because they're defined by their function, their doingness. Again, this idea of playing an action, the ally, the mentor, the healer. And we can wrap archetypes in endless variations to keep them surprising and nuanced. The reluctant ally, the resentful mentor, the misguided healer. So if there's only one thing you take away from all of this, it's that the intention is the impulse behind the action. But the action can be expressed in any number of ways. But this is how we get consistency in a performance while allowing for spontaneity in its expression. And why does any of this matter? Because we're storytellers. We want to reach beyond the footlights to touch the audience, but not in a creepy way. Unless it's that kind of show. And you've got release forms. Very important. But this is only the tip of a very big iceberg, so I'd love to hear your thoughts or comments. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I do love you. Now get out there. Be brilliant.